welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Since you're here, let me ask you, have you liked the video and subscribed to Bharata First? If no, then please do so now. Do subscribe to our newsletter as well to get some incisive information. And how can I not tell you about the Bharata First Knowledge Center? It is your one-stop destination for all your competitive exams needs. We now have 26 amazing courses all put together to help you in your competitive exams and also make you better Bharatiyas. Live classes for the second phase are going on at the moment. So do ensure that you register now and participate in the interactive sessions. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Many candidates who cleared the UPSC CSE this year have thanked Bharata First and the Knowledge Center for playing a big part in their success. So don't be left behind and don't regret later. Register now. You can also download the Bharata First app and go through several of the free quizzes that we have on offer there and improve your knowledge. Download the app or go to kc.bharatafirst.com and make use of this platform. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. And now on to the discussion. The Karnataka High Court hearing on Thursday asked students not to insist on wearing any cloth on campuses of educational institutions, which can instigate people till the hijab matter is resolved. The court posted the matter for Monday or February 14th. It also said the educational institutions can resume classes for the students. The three-judge full bench of Chief Justice Ritu Awasthi, Justice J M Khazi, and Justice Krishna S Dixit, which was formed on Wednesday, also said it wants the matter to be resolved at the earliest, but till that time, peace and tranquility is to be maintained. The hijab row started in December end when a few students started coming to the government pre-university college in Udupi wearing hijabs. To protest against it, some Hindu students turned up wearing saffron scarves. The row spread to other educational institutions in different parts of Karnataka, and the protest took a violent turn earlier this week, prompting the government on Tuesday to declare 3 days of holiday for institutions. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the hijab controversy. Joining me on the program today are P.K. Malhotra, former Law Secretary, Government of India, and Kapil Sankla, advocate to the Supreme Court. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Mr. Malhotra, let me start the program with you first. You know, it started off as a small little incident in a small little town on the southern coast of India called Udupi. From there on, in a couple of months, it has, blown out of proportion. The matter has gone up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, let the High Court first decide on this matter and then we'll look at it. But this is not new. It has been going on for a while now about religious clothing and what to wear and what not to wear. It has gone up to the Supreme Court in the past as well. Your thoughts on this current controversy?
Frank, I think you have very rightly pointed out an issue which started in a school in a small place could have been sorted out had the good offices of the local people been properly used and had they got positive attitude to the issue which has arisen in the college or the school. But unfortunately, it has been blown beyond proportion for the simple reason because we are nowadays living in an arena where even the smaller people living in smaller towns, just to come in limelight, they blow the issues out of proportion and want to take political mileage out of it. That is my understanding of the issue. So far as the constitutional issue is concerned, I mean, wearing of hijab, that is the headscarf, I mean, it has not raised an issue in the past, and whenever it has been raised, probably the different courts have dealt with it. But before I come to the different courts or the religious practices, because it is being said that it is an essential religious practice and permitted by the Constitution because of the freedom of religion which the citizens and other persons enjoy under Article 25 of the Constitution. Probably, I think that again has been blown beyond reasonable proportion because Article 25, it has been interpreted by the Supreme Court in the past also. Various high courts have given this direction. And more particularly with regard to this hijab, I understand even the Kerala High Court in 2018 has given a decision and a judgment. And at that time, the judgment has given at the admission stage itself, without going into the detail of it. And the law itself was discussed with regard to wearing of hijab. And it was said, I'm talking of the Kerala High Court judgment, they said that institutions are having rules and individual rights are there, then individual practices followed by the individuals will have to give way to the rules of the institution. If you want to read in a study in a particular institution, or you want to go to a particular office, then the rules and regulations which are applicable to this office need to be followed. So in case there is any government order or there is a regulation or there are instructions that need to be followed. But talking of Article 25 of the Constitution, article itself provides freedom of religion, but it says this freedom of religion, like all other fundamental rights, is also subject to certain restriction. And those restrictions can be imposed on the ground of public order, on the ground of morality, on the ground of health, and other provisions of the Constitution, meaning thereby other provision of this part, that is part 3 of the Constitution. So if it is violative of any other fundamental right, even then a reasonable restriction can be imposed. But this reasonable restriction has to be imposed by a law. There should be a law if you want to impose a reason, because we are talking of the fundamental rights. Once you want to restrict the fundamental rights, obviously the fundamental rights can be restricted by a law only. Now the question which is being debated is whether wearing of a hijab or the headscarf is an essential religious practice which has been earlier debated, and that issue is now squarely entirely before the court. And I think court, after hearing the parties, may come out with some decision. Why the single judge decided that the matter should be decided by a constitutional bench? Because of course interpretation of the provision of the Constitution is involved in this particular case. But at the same time, I personally feel there was a other view of looking at this problem was that whatever the existing law is available, interpretation of the law by the courts is available, taking that into view, probably the problem could have been nipped in the bud. Instead of doing that, referring the matter to the constitutional bench, probably it has again come to a limelight where maybe now there is a constitutional bench in the Karnataka High Court. From that particular decision, whatever way it go, the agreed party may again go to the Supreme Court, and it may take 10 years. Should we allow such a situation to aggravate to that situation, to that extent? Or should we try to amicably sit across the table and find out a solution that without hurting the religious feeling of the people? What via media can be found out so that the discipline in educational institutions are maintained? Mind it, in the educational institution, when you are prescribing a dress code, the idea is all students should look apart. It should not be that one is above the other, or one belongs to a particular reason, the other person belongs to another religion or another race. That should not happen. I'm just drawing an example from the old system. Even in the Gurukuls, when people used to go for study, whether he was son of a king or he was the son of a poor man, all of them have to respect the Guru in the same way and follow the same principles of the Gurukul. There was no difference between the Guru with a rich man or a poor man, or a person belonging to one religion or the other religion. If that kind of practices are established by the colleges or the schools, probably that need to be followed, that need to be respected, provided they are all deriving their authority and the fundamental rights which are given under the Constitution are not compromised, or they are not given a go by without following the due process of law as prescribed under the Constitution. Mind it, today the Constitution is supreme. Whatever interpretation you give, it has to come as per from the Constitution itself. And if you are making a law, it must be in conformity with the provision of the fundamental rights as enshrined in the Constitution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kapil Sankla, let me bring you in now. No, like Mr. Malhotra just pointed out, this matter has gone on for too long, and now it seems like irreparable damage has been done. So do you think that we need a final decision and we need some finality as far as this issue is concerned?
You're absolutely right. We do need finality. This matter has not only gone too long in India, but when you actually look at international courts, international various other countries, this matter has already been decided, argued, evaluated and come to just decision, and not just in European countries like Germany and France, but also in various Muslim dominant countries or Islamic countries, Iran, etc., where various issues such as this were already argued. Now, the difficulty to be asked to argue or state my point after Mr. Malhotra is that you can't help but agree with him, and he's already put across the constitutional aspect. You see, an interpretation of the constitutional right is required in this matter. As Mr. Malhotra rightly said, that Article 25 that gives us the right to profess, practice, or propagate any religion is there. But as with every fundamental right, this right is also not absolute. And the courts, the test in India as far as religious practices, whether it is an essential religious practice or whether it's integral to the religion or not. So what the courts would have to see is whether wearing of hijab is essential to Islamic way of life. Is it a part of Quran, or was it subsequently added to hadith or hadiths? And whether the hadith or hadiths itself are essential to the Quran itself or to the practices or not. That's one. So the evaluation whether a practice is vital or integral to a religion is something that would be seen. And this test has already taken place at least twice. One was in the triple talaq matter, and the second was in the Sabarmalai temple matter. So this question has already arisen, has been decided, and the courts have decided in favor of the larger issue, saying, and this is where the test, the international test is there. That was the test in France as well as in Germany, where they said whether a religious practice or a way of life is inclusive or exclusive. Because if it excludes the people from the society, then that practice must go. There is where a reading of Article 14 also comes, the right to equality. It would be argued on behalf of the proponents of hijab that Article 14 is infringed and the right to equality and equal opportunity to education will be taken away. However, the reverse is also true, that wearing of hijab takes away the right of a woman to be equal to a man. So it is something which also will be seen, as would be Article 19(1)(a), which has already been argued, the facet of freedom of speech and expression under 19(1)(a) of the Constitution will be seen. Again, as Mr. Malhotra rightly said, that this right is not absolute. The state will be well within its right to impose reasonable restrictions to achieve certain legitimate goals and interests that it would think is important. And the courts have also stated this today, that the status quo that has been granted to effectively say that none of the parties will be promoting or propagating their religious thought process, thoughts, and that the freedom would be limited to the fact that you can go to the college and be imparted education rather than promoting your religious values and ways of life.
Absolutely. Mr. Malhotra, let me bring in a social aspect into this as well, and let's see if we can find a middle ground. Understood that we need some kind of finality as far as this issue is concerned, but if you look at the minority Muslim community in the country and you look at the educational data that we have available, there are very few children from the Muslim community that actually go to school, and when you look at the girls as such, it is even fewer than the national average. So if you bring about a rule where there is no hijab or the hijab is not allowed, there could be a fear that lesser number of girls from the Muslim community will actually be sent to school or to colleges. Is there a middle ground? Can we address that somehow?
I think maybe I will have to go back to the earlier judgment which I referred to of the Kerala High Court, which was given in 2018. And mind it, again, it was the judge who was delivering this judgment was a Muslim judge. And the parents had gone there, and it was only with regard to the wearing of the hijab only. And there, the judge himself has said that probably it is not necessarily an essential religious practice, because he has not drawn that analogy, but I am saying that there are many other countries also which have taken this kind of action. But going without into that, they may be having their own laws. We have to decide this particular action or this particular order or direction in accordance with the provision of our constitution, which gives you freedom of religion. But which kind of religious practices, as Mr. Kapil Sankla also pointed out, court will decide whether it fall in our constitution or as per the interpretation given by the Supreme Court earlier, within the essential religious practice, or it goes much beyond that. I think all these issues need to be examined. But once you are asking for a middle path, and with regard to the education of the girl child, does the constitution anywhere deprive girl child from going to the school? No, it rather supports, and our education system also support, and even the present day government also fully supports it. Even we have made right to education as a fundamental right, although it was already in the right to life, Article 21, but a specifically separate article was added in the constitution saying right to education is a fundamental right. And for that, the Right to Education Act was also passed, and the education was made compulsory irrespective of the religion, race, or caste to which you belong. So that way, it's not the deprivation. But going back to the Kerala High Court judgment decision, which says that if there is an individual practice, religious practice, and there are rules and regulations of an institution, if you want to study in that educational institution, that you must follow the rules and regulation of that institution. And that rules and regulations must be not in conflict with the fundamental rights. That, of course, goes without saying. And there it was said, and I think the same kind of issue was there, and it was held that probably the rules made by the institutions can stand on a higher footing as compared to the individual religious practices. So if we take clue from that judgment, then obviously by putting this kind of rule, it's not that you are depriving the Muslim girls from going to school. You may be depriving them to going to a particular school of their choice. But yes, there are other schools and avenues available where if they want, they can wear hijab also, they can wear burqa also, they can go to other places also. But if you want to go to a particular school and that school has laid down certain norms, then I think it is the obligation on the part of the students that they must follow the norms laid down by the school.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm fully on board with what both the panelists have said about having some kind of uniformity as far as schools and colleges are concerned, because then it's easier for everyone really to deal with the matter. Talking about uniformity, let me just widen the scope of the discussion. Kapil Sankla, does this call for the UCC as well at some level, because that can address many of these other problems, many of these bigger issues that are lingering?
Well, in the larger interest of the nation, I think it is time that we have uniform civil code. You see, as far as the Hindu laws that have been codified over the centuries, over the years, is that there were various schools of thoughts. The various schools of thoughts were amalgamated. The two major schools of thoughts were put in, and the law as far as Hindu laws was codified. The Muslim law also was codified by various schools of thoughts, including Shia school and Sunni school and certain other schools of thoughts. And an amalgamated rule was created. I think it went well for a number of years. But if the country has to be truly integrated, I think it is high time that we bring in a uniform civil code. It is the need of the hour. That's one. Secondly, one also has to see, India also has to see what is happening internationally. And if you see what is happening in various countries, and if various countries and developed countries have come up to a decision banning hijab or burqas or etc., saying the need of the hour now is to to get the women of Muslim women in the mainstream and to give them equal opportunities, it is necessary that we ask them to remove hijab. I think it is high time that we also follow suit. India is not the first country where this question is coming. I mean, France is there, Belgium is there, Austria is there, Denmark, Bulgaria. France, in fact, also bans wearing hijab or any kind of covering in public schools. Turkey, another country, is there. If all these countries have decided, and on very logical principles, there is also an interesting study, I think it was done by Harvard, where it said that where hijab or covering was mandated in Iran, less students went to school or girls were educated. And so that's also something that one needs to study. Lastly, and very importantly, one also has to see And as you said, what is the middle path? The middle path is that India allows minority institute and minority education institutes. And the whole concept is the education is imparted in the four corners of your religious practices, and the courts and the states very rarely do impose their will or interpret their way of life. This is not a minority institute. And therefore, the purpose of an institute such as this is to be inclusive. Any religious practice that excludes a certain sect from normal way of life has to be questioned in such surroundings. Otherwise, tomorrow, remember, what if 10%, 15% start wearing saffron and coming, and somebody else wears their own, and the entire institute is divided into smaller bits and parts. Now, hijab doesn't really mean covering your face. It means a veil, a parda. Tomorrow, will you say that, there has to be a segregation where the women or Muslim women have to have a separate part of the college where boys cannot enter, or women who do not practice Islam cannot enter? No. I mean, as I said, it's a start, but be scared, be afraid where it would end. And you do not see a positive end to something like this.
Points taken, points well taken. It's time to get quick closing comments now from both my panelists with the best way forward from here. What must we do? Starting first with you, Mr. Malhotra.
No, Frank, I agree with what Mr. Kabir Sankla has said. I think we have been talking about uniform civil code for quite some time. And there are certain areas in all the religions where I think uniform civil code has become an essentiality, and without delay, it should be implemented by the government. Already the Law Commission has given its report. Of course, it is not a report. Probably they circulated a draft report on this particular issue, and all the pros and cons of uniform civil code have been discussed there. We have been talking about for quite a long time. The time has come when we should consider about it. Mr. Kapil Sapla also very rightly pointed out, so far as the minority institutions are concerned, it is never, working of the minority institutions is never interfered by the government, and any religious practice, all those institutions, if they want to continue, they can. And about the hijab, he has also again said, and I fully endorse his view, hijab doesn't have a definite meaning. Hijab means a parza. Today you are talking about the headscarf. Tomorrow you may ask, okay, there should be a separate section for the Muslim girls in the school. Then are you dividing these students in the school also in smaller groups and creating a different kind of division where it is going to end? So if you are working in an institution, if you are going to an institution, then I repeat, the rules of the institution must be followed. But at the same time, if there is a religious practice and you want to continue with your religious practice, then there are other options provided by the constitution and by the system itself. You must avail those other options which are available to you. And as on today, I think, again, I will repeat my opening remarks, which I said, probably this particular issue has also been blown beyond proportion by certain vested interests. And people, wise people, if they sit together, there is a possibility. Let the court decide. When the court decides, when the decision comes, it may be decided in a day, it may be decided in 1 week, it may take 1 year or 10 years, we don't know. But there is a possibility that without court intervention also, if people sit together and find out a via media, without hurting the feeling of a particular section, a via media can be found out, that should be looked into, and probably there are many ways in which the problem can be sorted out and peace can be restored. And we have to see that the interest of the students on ground is protected. And main aim of going to the educational institution is to get education and not to divide the society into race, religion, or caste.
Absolutely. Very important point there. And Kapil Sankla, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, if you look at Parda system that we had, so we equally were, in the pressure, force, and threat of such practices, and we've got over it. And the father of the constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, in his book 1945, Pakistan and Partition of India, very rightly said that the evil consequences of Parda are not confined to the Muslim community only. It is responsible for social segregation of Hindus from Muslims, which is a bane of public life in India. I think if we've got over it, it is important that our brothers and sisters from the other community also look at what is right and get over something like this.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave to that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, what's coming out of this discussion is that it is unfortunate that the matter has been politicized. It should not have been allowed to escalate this far in the first place. The matter should have been nipped in the bud at the local level itself in December when the row broke out. Now that it has been blown out of proportion, it is best that it reaches its finality, and along with many such issues, we get some closure. And the best way, of course, is the legal remedy, and hopefully the courts will decide on this matter sooner rather than later. The hijab row also throws the spotlight on the Uniform Civil Code once again, and the time seems ripe to consider implementing it, thereby putting an end to several such issues. Now, students should be focusing on their classes and education rather than indulging in such activities. So it is best that we put this behind us and ensure that everybody focuses on their studies, especially the young students who have been indulging in protesting, sloganeering, and other such activities. Now, before I go, let me once again remind you to like the video, subscribe, and share the video as well so that more people get to know about Bharata First. Do subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive information. And how can I not tell you about the Bharata First Knowledge Center, a big success story? It is your one-stop destination for all your competitive exams needs. We now have 26 amazing courses altogether put in place to help you in your competitive exams as well as to make you better Bharatiyas. Live classes for the second phase have begun and are currently in progress. Do ensure that you register now and participate in the interactive sessions. Go to kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Hundreds are reaping the benefits of the Knowledge Center. Don't be left behind and don't regret later. Also, you can download the Bharata First app from your Play Store and get all the latest information, participate in all the live quizzes that are going on there. This is all free of cost and it will help you in gaining knowledge. So either register at kc.bharatafirst.com or download the app now. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.